What is going on, everybody? Today we are actually analyzing the Red Bull Kumite grand final set, Gobou versus Diaphone. Of course, Gobou playing Goldlewis in grand finals, despite not playing Goldlewis throughout the rest of the tournament, randomly pulls out the Goldlewis versus Diaphone's Eno. As you all know, I have a very hard time in this matchup, and I'm very curious as to how Gobou deals with one of the best Eno players in the world in what I perceive to be a very difficult matchup. So yeah, let's get to it. So initially I recorded this as a typical analysis video where I watched the entire thing and I commentated over it and I gave my analysis, but Red Bull didn't like that. You know, it is their intellectual property. I respect that. And so we're going to do a different format. I have a bunch of clips and we're going to go individual scenarios throughout the set where I think I can teach you all something, and I hope you all enjoy the format. We have a 6-8-4 that's blocked. This is pretty much neutral, and I think this is a great place to talk about the neutral and how it's going to be played throughout the rest of the set. So identified a couple patterns, and first is that 2P is used as an anti-air for the aerial approaches, but it's also going to stay safe from strokes on whiff, right? And when I say stroke, I mean stroke the big tree. And JD is an option that's going to call it any kind of approach, but it's punishable like chemical love, or the opponent can use your whiff to take a turn or note. And finally, the only way to call it the stroke is to grab the long stroke or 2K, 5K, either stroke. So observing this as a neutral situation, let's see what option Gobou goes for. We're going to see a neutral jump into JD covering any kind of approach, but Diaphone obviously stopped right there, just dashed forward and then stopped. And Diaphone is going to use this whiff opportunity to run in and take an 8-stroke, and Gobou does not react in time, but Gobou does 2P, and once again, the 2P is designed to stop an aerial approach, but it will still be safe to the stroke. So now Diaphone is plus, Gobou's forced to block. Gobou uses the BRC or the YRC and stuffs the stroke with a 2K. And for our next situation, Diaphone's going to win a scramble and then ultimately put Gobou in the corner. And we're going to get to a spot where Diaphone is going to reset pressure by trying to throw out a note. If I was in this situation, I would probably just sit there and block. I wouldn't know what to do. But Gobou has a different philosophy. So Gobou is going to go for the neutral jump into the 268. And if you look at my mouse over here, you're going to see that the arc that this covers is pretty much every challenge. It's going to go right over Diaphone's like JH or a stroke and likely punish it. Instead, though, Diaphone hard reads this and calls it out with a 6P here. But I think this clip is important to include because it kind of shows like the all-in mentality Gobou kind of has in these defensive situations when you can use your life as a resource. So Gobou obviously took this amount of HP for that. Really not that bad. He's in the same position that he was already in before, but there was a good chance that he could have gotten out. And we're on to the next clip. This is a game start situation. And we see Gobou go for the far slash and Diaphone go for a jump into dive. Now this is important. Gobou actually never goes for the 6P anti-airs on the dive throughout the entire set, and that's because of the inconsistency of Goldlewis's 6P, as well as the fact that Eno can can take different paths, and also can alter the momentum and like freeze in the air stall, and then dive in. So it makes it very difficult for Goldlewis. So opts to always block these. You're going to see this throughout the entire set. Once again, blocks it into 2P, straight into 6-8-4, back to a pretty neutral situation. Diaphone just opts to press, and then on the 8-stroke, Gobou catches it. And I don't know if this is luck, but it's kind of ironic because Diaphone burst baits Gobou a ton by 8-stroking under the burst, and I don't know if this was planned. This might just be a timing thing for this one thing, but close slash into 2H actually baits the burst, and that's it. Eno dies for this. And here we are on the next clip. We're in a post wall break super situation. Gobou low HP. Diaphone has the hard knockdown. Gobou's going to go for a defensive option that he uses twice in the set, and that is backdash into BRC. Very strong. Makes space for the 6-8-4. If Diaphone had pressed a button here, Diaphone has no resources. That could have been a knockdown into potentially a game-losing path. And so Gobou goes to the 6-8-4, jumps forward, and goes to the 2-6-8. We saw this earlier when I said in the corner, Gobou went for the 2-6-8, and it works exactly like I said it would earlier, in that Diaphone goes for the stroke, gets punished with a 2-6-8 from full screen. This all sort of stuff like any kind of approach. But once again, this behemoth right here just straight up loses to being blocked. And they get the hard knockdown, the hit. Ultimately, it's not going to matter because Diaphone is too big of a health lead, gets in, and kills Gobou. And here we are in a round start situation. We have Gobou going for the neutral jump into the JH. Diaphone actually going to catch that, gets the hit, and a knockdown. Gobou going to get burst back, pushes him back, throws out the drone, playing very patiently behind it, and then immediately runs in. This is something that I didn't know actually existed. So we all know that the BTs got changed in the air, but did you know that you can actually recreate the old BT momentum by just letting your dash stop and then pressing the Behemoth? Now, Gobou's going to fall straight down instead of going all the way out to the left, ultimately punishing Diaphone's approach here. And gets the counter hit. Runs in for the hard knockdown. 268, close slash, catches a backdash, and this is just a 1 round. So the next 2 clips I'm going to show you the 2 different times that Diaphone used a note in neutral and how Gobou dealt with it. So Diaphone here gets knocked down, but goes for a burst on wake up into the note. And Diaphone likes to use the note to cover the ground, which I don't believe is optimal, but I believe the game plan is to bait. You cover the ground to force Goldlewis to go jump into something committal, and then Diaphone 6Ps it. Unfortunately, both times they went for it. The neutral structure just didn't work, probably due to this spacing, and I'll explain how that works in a second. So Gobou, of course, didn't pay $60 to block, not going to hold the mix. Goes for a jump into JD. Diaphone's playing very non-committal here, but they don't properly build the space. They go for a dash block into FD, into land 6P, and get hit by the JD. Fortunately, their button didn't come out, so they didn't get counter hit, just a regular hit, and so they don't get counter hit, but effectively it's all the same. It's a knockdown. You have no resources. Gobou is going to close this round out very, very quickly, and then calls it the backdash here with the 486. Oof. And here we are at the second clip in which note was used in neutral. Let's rock. Round start position. Gonna back off and go for the chemical of building a ton of space. Ultimately gets full screen away, gets the note out. But once again, Gobou has pretty good counterplay to this in that they go for a really non-committal JD at a really good time. So Diaphone has to make up all this space, but of course Eno doesn't have a run. Eno has to dash forward, which means they have to land and then press a button if they're gonna anti-air. So let's see how this plays out. Diaphone running forward and is landing right here, but the active hitbox for this move is already coming out. So if they go for the 6P, there's a very good chance that they get hit. In this scenario, they probably wouldn't have, because as you'll see in a second, this is right outside of the JD range, but you saw last time that they actually got hit for this. And so Diaphone plays it patiently, opts not to press anything, even though it would have worked in the situation, and Gobou lands. Diaphone easily able to take a turn, goes to the 6P, in case Gobou mashed something, or maybe just to take a turn into a stroke. Gets the hit, but oh, this is so sad. Gobou opts to challenge the reset, and a knockdown on a character with no resources is so hard to deal with, and that's just another dead Eno. And we're on to the next clip. We're in a post-wall break scenario, the same we saw last time, where it was a hard knockdown from a super, and Gobou's going to go for the same defensive option, the backdash into BRC, and this time opts to challenge with the 268. This is a good option because it's going to catch the stroke, and you're about to see the 268 in a second, but it's going to catch a stroke, and it should also catch some kind of aerial approach, maybe even a dive, but of course, Diaphone picks the dive, and it's just outside of the range, like pixels out. Diaphone going to get the dive out, but Gobou actually safe, and once again, if you block a dive, it is actually your turn. Gobou's going to challenge the 2P here. Goes to the JH. This situation right here is plus. Goes for 2K, but not actually combo. Goes for a reset pressure. And from these plus frames, you're plus 12, but if you're a Goldlewis doomer, you know that people can backdash out of this. Gobou goes for a hard call out against the backdash with a run forward JD, and this is something that I've been implementing into my play as well. People know how strong backdash is against Goldlewis, but Goldlewis has a really strong option to call out backdashes in the JD, so that's exactly what Gobou does. Runs forward, challenges with the JD, gets the knockdown, and ultimately wins the game because of it. Now we're at a game start situation. Both players are going to have burst. Round start, going to go for a neutral jump into the JD. This option is very strong. I just found out about this recently. Apparently, Schwelly told me that they've been doing it. But if you go for a spaced JD, like you can either land into it or you can 6-6 to it if they're building space. But there are some distances where JD is not 6Pable. So Diaphone's going to go for some kind of anti-air here and get counter hit for it because the JD hitbox is hitting the legs. So you can actually convert this with a 684, but Gobou doesn't go for it, just decides to run in, whiffs a 2K, and then goes for 684, which hits, and then baits a burst. After the wall break, going to go for the BRC in. So this is important. I used to do this a lot in Nagoriyuki, and I don't do it as much on Goldlewis, but against Ino, you can 6-6 RC in, and you can kind of react to what she does. If she runs up like this, you can go for a 2P and then run up and take a turn, which is pretty much what Gobou does, 2P into the run up 486. And yeah, that you could have OTG'd, by the way, Gobou. I'm very disappointed. PRC's in and gets the kill. And this is the final clip. This is the final round of the entire tournament. Gobou's going to get a knockdown here. Runs forward, goes for the 268, 268, 684. Backs off, playing little footsies. And once again, let's take a look at this option. Gobou is going to dash forward. And this is a dash block, by the way, into 2P, because once again, it's going to duck under the chemical love, right, which we just saw. It's going to stop the aerial approach, and it's going to be safe against the stroke the big trees, even though it won't be in just a second, you'll see that. But yeah, a really great neutral tool that I haven't been using, and I know now. And from the situation, Gobou is actually going to use the confusion to go for a JD, because in that situation where Ino just whiffed that, yes, Diaphone can backdash or try to note or something, but Gobou can go for a raw 684 and punish on any of those things. And with that much HP, with no resources, getting knocked down here means your tournament life is over, especially since Gobou also has the bar. In the confusion, Gobou goes to the JD, gets the hit, and this pretty much solidifies the entire tournament, but doesn't confirm, goes for 268, 268, 684. Back to a neutral position. Diaphone going to go for the heavy stroke, actually gets him to block it. This is plus, but once again, if you're in this situation, think about it from Gobou's perspective, right? Ino is plus. They're not spaced, so that way they can go for a normal. There's no way for them to frame trap from this spacing. And so, Gobou can actually just go for a delayed 2P. That is going to, number one, be safe from the stroke, and number two, anti-air some kind of aerial approach. And what is, of course, Gobou goes for the 2P into the 684, back to the neutral state once again. This time, once again, Diaphone tries to run in. Gobou goes to the 2P into the 684, keeping him out. So now Diaphone tries the stroke and actually finds the timing to hit the 2P and get the counter hit because Gobou had been delaying so much. And there's a knockdown. Unfortunately for Diaphone, though, they just don't have the resources to come back in this game. Gobou still has burst. Diaphone has no HP. It's very difficult to kill Goldlewis with this much HP. And yeah, this right here is when I knew the tournament was over. The only way they can win from here is by baiting the burst and then sticking in afterwards. But of course, Gobou's not going to let this happen. Gobou gets hit, immediately bursts as safe as possible, and goes for the GAT to close out the entire tournament. Gobou takes Red Bull Kumite. And wow, what an amazing tournament. I really hope to see more of this player.